Hi everyone, it's Maria from Jardin de Papier. I'm here today to do a flip through of an Italian winemaker's notebook, and it is an altered book, and this is the picture that started it all. It's a Piedmontese family at the time of harvest, but I wanted to really keep everything together just because I think it helps tell a story. It's all from Italy and it's all hard to find. So let's get started. The book, it's from 1920. Just set this aside. And it has a leather spine. And I kept the spine mostly intact. I did have to rebuild it once I removed the rest of the old text block. These leather hinges on there. And luckily I found some scraps. I just decided to build a traditional kettle stitch text block. So the book measures about just under 6 inches by 8 3/4 or 8 1/2, and the original spine is about just under 2 inches. It is quite chunky, but I did build the text block so that some of the center pages had more room, so that if you add photos or your own wine labels, it wouldn't get to alligator mouth. But it feels really, really heavy, really thick, and really good in the hands, just because the spine itself really wanted to be full. So I had to really fill it up with pages. Because the spine itself was a thinner leather, I had to glue a French linen inside, a dyed French linen stitching. So it's a little bit harder to stitch leather, but it was worth it if it means it lasts another 100 years. So we'll get right into the story. Again, it's a Piedmontese family, Italian winemaker. The Piedmont is northeast of Italy, and this is a map that will come with the book. The map itself was printed in France in 1830, so this is the original, and it's the topography map. So you'll see that the Piedmont is actually at the base of the Swiss Alps. So this right up here is Switzerland, and over here is France. And then down here is the Mediterranean and the south of France, my favorite place in the world. So this map actually will look really good framed. And this is a little village in Piedmont, Italy. And you'll actually see a postcard that depicts this and focuses in on the church. With an extra layer from the book, I did give it a book plate. This is actually paper pulp, or the plant that a lot of paper is made from. I thought that would be pretty cool. This is actually, this and the other end piece, book plate on the end, on the back page, are the only ones that I aged. A little bit of a silk belly band to put in Ruby and Pearl's Bohemian Rose, just because of the perfect wine color. And everything I print, and there's very little printables in here, is printed on vintage or antique ledger paper. Stitch work together and really sturdy. But I had to do this extra layer of French linen on the inside to carry the weight. Focusing on the Italian countryside in that porcelain pin. And when she was in her early 20s, she found an antique letter of her mother's, written to her mother. Her mother's name was Anna, and she already lived in Italy, instead just the postmarks. But this I found on eBay, and it's actually a will dispute or discussion about how much her will is worth. Now, her mother is half British, just the American last name, but she's also half Italian. So she actually claimed the right to this land and the vineyard itself. And the unique part of this letter, the reason why I waited for it so long on eBay to win it, is because of this cross-writing, which is rare to find. So now, the 4th generation takes over. I'll just put her there. And we'll just name him Michael for purpose of the journal. This is a postcard of a gentleman's photograph, Italian man. But the will is now in his hand, and because he is the eldest, he will have to come home. He's been living in France and Portugal, and he actually met a French woman and had a baby girl with her. His best friend was actually an art critic, and his job was a wine critic. And so I actually designed this journal to look a lot like this gentleman's notebook here, where there's a lot of loose pages on the inside, A lot of, cuttings, a little dried leaf from an ivy, and that's his picture. He was an artist. This journal, everything's authentic and collectible, so this is going to be very unique for me. It's my first masculine. All of the papers are vintage and or antique ledger, and this is the first collectible postcard. It's actually a village in the Piedmont, and there's no official date, but it's probably 1911 plus or minus. And actually it's if you focus in on the church and the architecture, it really depicts this scene in this 1861 bookplate. Actually, let me double check my dates. 1861, printed in London, original steel engraving bookplate. But for this particular plot of land, they could plant both red and white grapes. And so there are very strict Italian laws, DOC and DOCG. This is my little book on everything from Barolo to Valpolicella. Higher stricter law, DOCG, which guarantees the quality of the wine as well. So there's a little bit of that Italian wine law. Okay, a little bit of antique wallpaper from Liz on Lucky Street. You'll notice the book will eventually open and lay flat, eventually, once enough pages. And I did stitch everything individually. So this is actually an antique French receipt. Is this one the silk and ribbons? Even though it's silk and ribbons, as you can tell, the mom actually loved her details, and so she built this book based on using papers that she already had. And so even though her life used to be about silk and ribbons, it actually now is all about making the winery productive and profitable. And a lot of natural patina. Another French receipt, I couldn't read this one. A broderie. Your land that your wine grows on actually inherits a lot of the flavors of, or not flavors, a lot of the essence of what's growing around it. So chestnut trees, and Italy is land of porcini, mushrooms, the little piglet mushrooms, and it's also land of the great white golden truffle of Alba, which is gold. It really is a white truffle. So if you know the shape, they're pretty round and just kind of funny looking. But so I just did a little watercoloring of your porcini mushroom. And here is 1920 empty envelope. It's from London, or to London from Italy. So you have your authentic stamps right there. There are so many recipes. And actually, I did get a lot of inspiration for the pages from this cookbook, Flavors of Italy, Piedmont. But it does have really good recipes of pasta and a risotto in here, just to warn you. So there's a picture of that. Again, Piedmont is a gastronomy haven. Actually, all of Italy is. But Piedmont is more than just red or white wines. It's all of these wines based, again, on the strict Italian law. So the two most well-known are Barbaresco and the Barolo, one of the antique pages, and this is an Italian book page that I backed it with so that you could do some collaging. A lot of space for your wine tasting notes or journaling. I purchased a lot of, or the only Italian authentic ephemera that I could find on Etsy or eBay, really, from Roxy Creations. She's in Italy. And so I think this one is proof of baptism. 1942. Yeah, 1942. It's very brittle, but I love it. So you'll see a lot of the authentic Italian ephemera floating instead of being stitched in, just because it was so hard to find it, and a lot of it is very brittle. 1911 British ledger paper. So here's the first grape that comes from Piedmont. This one's Nebbiolo. That's the red grape. I did a little watercolor of it and a little silk backed by the silk and willow silk. And so what I'm going to do is, what you'll need is, because I don't want to over massage the spine, which will flex as you use it, just like any book. I just use a little leather bookmark But what I did was I painted the grapes. It's actually late October harvest in Italy for this Nebbiolo. And they wait until it's really cold. And because they are backed up against the Alps, they have the altitude and they get a lot of fog in October. And that creates sort of a frost across all the grapes. And they take on this blue hue, almost like a blueberry. And that's when you harvest. So late harvest. And in fact, in spring and summer, the grapes might still be a yellow-green. And then autumn and fall, September, you'll see it turning red. And you'll see the traditional grape colors. And then by October, it starts to turn blue like the blueberries, and then that fog will really give it a chill. And that's when you harvest. Here's that 1911 ledger, some vintage French linen with the traditional stripes, and a couple of French wine labels. So he traveled a lot. This is some art paper from Donna Morgan, and I just love the blues. And actually, her art paper, I don't know what her technique is. She took a class. Reminded me of some of the wildflowers in the Swiss Alps. And so I just love the contrast and the textures that you'll find in his. But again, through his travels, Michael, he'd go to Bourguignon and he would do some tastings of the different wines available there. A little bit more of the eco-dyed silk from Silk and Willow. And this is actually painted on antique Italian book pages. The only real new book pages in here are book pages from the architect Andrea Palladio. He lived in the 16th century, and this book is full of his architecture designs and sketches. And of course, he's Italian. And in the 1540s, he actually worked with farm owners and landowners to either revitalize or expand on their villas. And so these are actual examples of some of the villas in 1540 that he had designed. And the second postcard you'll see, this is also one that I won on eBay, is of a small village. Let me double check my notes here. It is Volvera Via Principale in 1910. It's in Turin. But take a look at the architecture. So actually, even though I don't have proof on this postcard, writing on the back there, I don't have proof that it was Andrea Palladio's sketches. There is a very, very distinguishable look and character to his architecture. Owners who have owned these plots for centuries in some cases. A third postcard is, again, it's a French cave or a French winery. The reason I'm showing it is because this floating book plate here is a book plate of mineralogy and genealogy. And if you look at it closely, it looks like a lot of the equipment that vintners use, their wine vats and their equipment for distilling. And part of Michael's job now was to also repair all of the equipment on his land, at his vineyard. This one, the reason I love this postcard is because even though it's a French winery, it does go over the different tariffs for the different types of wines and some of the prices. Developing some more of your antique French pages. I just love these pages. His travels, he would go to the monks because some of the monks owned all the books in the world, truly. And they were some of the best culturists around and winemakers without necessarily having the big names. A ledger paper from Britain, 1920s, another wine label. This one's from Alsace. Some of my favorite wines from Alsace are very sweet. Not necessarily dessert, but just on the sweeter, lighter side. Some fabric from Great Britain. I just love the wine color, so you'll see this fabric throughout. Okay, I'm just going to remove this book page here because it keeps wanting to fall out. Another wine label from the Languedoc. This is the south of France. It's heading towards Marseille. I did stay there, and I love their wines. It's a little lighter, refreshing for the extreme heat. This is one of Ruby and Pearl's digitals from her Bohemia collection. I love the wine colors and the job of the butterflies. Just like bees, without bees and butterflies, there will never be vineyards or grapes grown again And so you'll see a lot of different butterflies along the Alps doing their job. Some of the fountain pen inks. One of your Italian floating ephemera. I love it because of the color of the stamps and the rim of the paper, red. Rouge for wine. This is actually toothpaste, I think, and solid cleaning products maybe, or shaving lotion. I tried to do a little bit of translating, but it's a little harder with some of these older receipts. A lot more ledger paper. Oh, these are the younger brothers of Mikael, part of the 4th generation. They were just in college, so now that they've graduated, they've been summoned home to help the vineyard become profitable. Their focus is on marketing and profit margins for the wines and the pricing, and also some of the advertising. So with all the perfect staining. So it's been washed, it's just those are stains from the work field. I have some of this vintage or nearly antique ledger, but it's shorter and it's also very thick, and so it tends to want to stick up. But again, once you start massaging your pages down or use just a lightweight, bookmark, book rest on your pages, you can write quite comfortably in these pages. Another wine label from the Languedoc. I just love the colors of the browns. Reminds me of the mushrooms that you can find in the forests in Italy. If I didn't mention, I think their forests have over 900,000 hectares of forests of different type of nut trees, which gives their mushrooms that really meaty taste. This page here is a little bit of a British vintage fabric pocket and another Bordeaux wine label. This page here is actually one of her Bohemia, Ruby and Pearl's Bohemia pages, printed onto that very antique fountain pen paper. It's very thin, but there's something about it that is now my favorite. I already know it's an antique French paper, and I'm not sure, but maybe Ina from France can tell me, is this one of the Lace Le Puy? It looked like it from your video where you were telling the history of the different laces of France. But Italians, of course, the rich history of the church, the Roman Catholic Church, had to have the little prayer card in there. All these gold paper clips that I'm using are made in Italy, so they're super strong. So on the back was intended to be a belly band, but I couldn't glue down the back of this eco-dyed silk from Silk and Willow. It's just too pretty with the plants she used. Plus it has a color hue of white wine. I messed up on one of the leaves, so I just did a paper overlay. What do you call this when you do the different layers of papers? Not paper mache, but I just covered up my goof Sherbet and the different wine colors. And I printed these to coffee stain paper, so I love how that looks. And then the other side of that printable, I just love the authentic writing that bleeds right through to it. You have a couple pages from the Grand Magasin de Louvre from Paris because of the October diary pages. So even though in the back here it goes to December, I just loved including some of the original handwriting here. And of course I love this paper for all of my fountain pen writing. Absorbs it really well. It can't be an Italian winemaker's journal without your obligatory Italian flashcards. Agire, to act or behave. Mikael is not opposed to asking for help from his younger brothers. And then indovinare, to guess, or he's not about guessing what's going to make this winery work. Floating pages, technically. So I did a few more watercolors on this more or less nearly antique ledger paper. I don't remember if this is Liz on Lucky Street. This one is. This is a calendar page with notes in September, so you're getting prepared for your October harvest. On the back is actually your to-do list for Tuesday the 1st of October and Wednesday the 2nd of October. I did some wine swatch colors for you for the different types of red wines in Italy. I didn't write in what they are, because then maybe if this is going to a wine taster or sommelier, they can actually note it here. The last one, actually, because I couldn't get my plum color just right, I wanted it a little darker. That's actually a piece of the Silk and Willow silk that I glued down. Antique Italian book page with the patina of the bookbinder's tape that they used. So that's just kind of floating in here. Again, you don't have to keep anything that I've painted for you. I just wanted to give the future owner ideas on how they could use some of the book pages and not to be afraid to paint on them. Travel all over Europe. And then this little maroon colored lotion from Paris, just because of the maroon color. Maroon and wine is so perfect with not only the region and the colors of Italy, but also the season. So everything is pretty much revolved around this color palette right here. Little bits and pieces of the fabric. So I didn't mention there's 200 sides easily that are bound into the book. And then, of course, all your floating ephemera and floating ledger papers. A lot of people forget Italy also has olives. And again, everything is about food there, the gastronomy, throughout all of the regions of Italy, actually. And so I did a watercolor of a couple that I've found, just pictures on the internet. Even on the back, in the Castelvetrano is the buttery, rich, meaty one that you might actually find more in some of the specialty grocery stores. And then, of course, just some more watercolor swatches on the antique Italian book pages, and this lovely eco-dyed Silk and Willow silk, just because it reminds me of some of the mushroom stains or colors that you'll find in the forest. It's a little thinner, but that's what I like. Just massage your book open like this. This is an 1847 Italian letter. Let me double check if I have the stamp on there. I'll find it on the inside. I think this might actually be a school report card or a school report. I couldn't read some of the handwriting, so I couldn't fully translate it. Oh, 1895, looking for our French and our British ledger papers that are more readily available. On this page here, I included some of the Silk and Willow silks that are really fine, but the wine colors of Merlot, even though there's no, we're not growing Merlot in Italy, but just the different ranges of violets that you have, so that if you are using this as a wine tasting journal, you could cut snippets of it, or you could use it in your other projects. And then this is just a floating bookmark slash red wine paint swatch on the Cadi paper from Belgium, I think, maybe from Postal Love, but you can see the watermark actually through there. Let me see here. I printed it to a very brittle vintage ledger paper that you can actually journal on or collage on. But it's from April of 18. And it's on all Italian, the journal of the notebook. And it's actually my favorite for some reason, maybe because of just the crispness of the black and white. It's your black art paper, mixed media art paper, with this Côte de Provence wine label. And it is a tuck, just in case you want to put your own labels or little notes in there about what you were tasting that day. But there's another antique postcard that's rare. This one's even more rare because it's champagne, the wine bottle filling. And so you'll probably notice, if I hold this still really quickly, that the bottles are stored upside down, or when you see them inside the caves, inside the racks, bottle neck and the cork, so that they can disgorge it a little bit later on and release some of the chalk. So this one's blank, so you can actually write on there. I just love the patina on there. And then on the back is a piece of art, a copy of artwork that I've used before, antique or vintage Italian ephemera. And that comes from Roxy Creations. Where's the year on this one? I don't remember what year. Some of these were from the but this one's definitely 1900s. I think they might be a stamp or medallion company, because of course it has its nice wear and tear. But you could journal on that, or just use it as your part of include it in your Italian collection. Yeah. We're coming to the 5th generation of this winemaking family. I told you Mikhail left his daughter in France with his ex-wife, and she's actually the 5th generation. She comes over as a young teenager, about to turn 20, because she actually has an interest in winemaking. She travels, all through Europe with her mother, and she actually has the palate for becoming one of the greatest female winemakers Italy's seen. My mother and the granddaughter, so handing it off from female owner to a future female owner of the vineyard to great winemaker. Blank ledger paper, blank antique ledger paper, very brittle, but I was able to stitch it in. I had to reinforce it with some of the British ledger and make it a pocket tuck. Some of the wildflowers that you'll find in the Swiss Alps or in the Italian Alps. Paper, typing paper. I just love the crinkly sound of it, loading pages, because it's a postcard, antique postcard from Venezia or Venice, northeast Italy. So actually, this person sent it once they were home. And then some French ledger paper in green. So there's a lot. So even though there's over 200 sides, you'll actually get more writing room than I listed. This one, I forgot to translate it. French, my favorite French ledger paper, the buttery soft one. And I lined it with the little bits and pieces of antique wallpaper that I had left from Heather at Ruby and Pearl XO, and a pink Italian ephemera. Doing some maintenance within the chateau. And then over here is just a piece of British ledger paper. I don't remember what year, but I just love the pink ink. Another antique postcard, Moet au Chandon, in Champagne, in Reims, France. And these are the bottles. It looks like they're taking them out now, so it's after they've disgorged and removed the chalks from the bottles. But this is a advertising postcard, so this one's rare as well. Linen that I got from Jax on Instagram, and then the French linen tidbits here, just because I wanted to give the pages a little more, structure, and not just plain ledger paper. Even though, to me, vintage and antique ledger paper is the most beautiful, especially because I'm such a writer, sketcher, and watercolor. I love watercolors. Oh, and this antique ledger actually has a little bit of a skeleton of the dried flowers that they probably pressed in it. So you notice because again, Mikhail was a wine critic and his friend was a art critic while in France, and his friend, they would go to art shows together and they would serve tables of wine, and so he collected a couple of their advertisements and or newspaper cutouts. And this is just an ad for Bordeaux wine, deliveries and receipt payments. Some of my favorite ledger papers actually has the original leather tabs, and so you'll notice a lot of the patina around them. But I just put in another Pinot Gris wine label from 92 and another page of your Grand Magasin de Louvre. More ledger here, and then one of the wildflowers to hold anything sewn in. The ledger blue linen from France, which holds maybe two more Italian agile, which is nimble and quick, and agio, leisure. I don't think, but I thought this was the late 1800s. Some of the fine calligraphy, fine point from their fountain pen, and it's a really thick ledger. My favorite colors are, actually I have a lot of favorite colors, reds and maroons, orange snippet, not lace, but fabric from, this one must be Honey Silks Apparecchiare, to set the table, because you're all about to unite and gather, because we all have a big appetite, appetite. Even though my pronunciation is off, having been forced to speak nothing but Italian for 2 weeks because the nuns in Tuscany just didn't speak it, you'll be amazed at how quickly you will learn a language when you have no choice, especially if you want to eat. Italian. This is also from a vicar. I don't remember if this is the marriage license. I'm starting to run out of my mending tape, but you'll love how fine this paper is. So again, ephemera, and it's definitely an investment, that's for sure. One of the antique documents that came from Roxy Creations in Italy, with the seal and the embossed seal here, and the beautiful calligraphy and the aging of the papers. That's one of these from Andrea, the architect. But this is a thicker quality paper from France. I think a brown paper parcel. Mia gave it to me for some of my photos sketch. But that is there for you. And then another ledger page with a belly band to the right, again, because I wanted some of the fabrics to really give this book some room when I bound it. It was hard to find Italian wine labels. In fact, I found none. There was a couple of them on eBay attached to original menus from restaurants, but the restaurants were from Milan or somewhere in northeast Italy instead of Piedmont, so it's still a long time to collect everything. Bordeaux wine label, you can use that as a tuck. And then some of the old antique ledger paper where I printed ruby and pearls. A little bit of ink splash there. Okay, so this was, the other side of that antique ledger British paper with letters N and O. Which collection from Ruby and Pearl XO it's from, but it's hidden with these French linens right here as your little book tab. So it does stick up a little bit. It's a little harder, but just like your book pages, massage it and give it give it a new shape. Again, everything is the spine is lined with a muslin and book glue, so this will not fall apart. As many of us who take apart books know how hard some books are to take apart. Wine. The reason it's in here is because one, it comes from Nice, France, my favorite place in the world, but also as the great-granddaughter Anna is starting to do the winemaking. Into the 30s, they're starting to expand into France and all throughout Europe, not just Italy. Their success as a winemaker and vineyard. This is an original book page from the book. Just like that one Norwegian book that I had, the book pages were not cut through. So you'd see page 233, flip the page, and we'd be on page 236. And talking about the new wines, the reds and the whites. And in my time, really good wine could be bought for just 4 pence a bottle. And then at the time of the vintage, the year it would come out, all the country taverns and wine shops would display a tied bush to their pole of their doors to signal that they have new wine available for sale, including these. Because I like painting, or some people press their flowers into books. And I've seen a lot of mixed media magic happen with old book pages, so I just left some of those in there. And then this was the original bookend paper from the book, brown, a nice older wallpaper, which I love. And then this second book plate, it's actually a newer book plate that I aged, but the butterflies, because again, without the butterflies and the bees, you have no vineyards and no wine, or no great photographs like this one. If you do want to keep this in your book, I recommend putting it in the very back, and then thick board original photograph. So that is your journal here, 1861, of a village in Piedmont on the original topography map. Actual families of winemakers is hard, no matter what country they're from. And again, I'll make, the books that I showed you available just in case you do want to try some of the recipes, or if you are a sommelier or a wine connoisseur or expert. But thanks for lasting through this longer flip through yet again, and I will see you next time. Thank you.